Good afternoon, happy Sunday, and welcome to Arts, Culture, and Thing in Between. I am Rose October, your host, and I am going to tell you a little bit about the program like I always do, as I welcome those of you who are repeaters and those of you who are joining us for the first time. Arts, Culture, and Thing in Between is a program that features individuals who are gatekeepers of our arts and culture. They are not only performing artists, but also teachers, advocates, and scholars who focus on the preservation of the arts and culture. When arts is mentioned, it's being referred to as the different art forms like visual, applied, and performing arts. Examples of visual arts are painting, sculpting, photography, filming. Examples of applied arts would be fashion designing, as in the way the fashion designer works with different patterns and fabrics, jewelry designing, the way that the jewelry designer works with materials such as wood, plastic, metal, silver, gold, and various types of stones. Furniture designing, the way that the furniture works with various types of woods, the ways that the woods are laid. In other words, applied arts has to do with designing, building, or constructing a project. In looking at performing arts, examples would be music. Did I say music? Did I say music? Theater, opera, drama, singing, stand-up comedy, and my first love, dance. The middle part of the name of the program, culture, arts, culture, and thing in between. When culture is mentioned, it generally means the way of life for a particular group of people. So for this program, it is inclusive to mean the various groups of individuals that embrace ways of life. In other words, looking at attitudes and behaviors. What is important to note, though, is that as culture is mentioned, I'm really looking at how practices are passed from one generation to another. Thing in between, the last part of the name of the program, arts, culture, and thing in between. This has to do with life issues that affect the execution of the arts and cultural practices. This involves both positive and negative experiences that become part of the creative process. Today's guest is a performing artist, amongst other things. But before we meet him, let me read his bio. Keith Waithe is a flautist, flute collector, music teacher, community servant, entrepreneur, composer, and director. For over 40 years, this musical icon, who hails from British Guyana, now Guyana in South America, was born in Georgetown and raised with three other siblings in the village of Kitty. At 7 years old, he was first introduced to music by his father, Donley Van Herbert Waithe, who taught him to play the trumpet. It should be noted that his father played in big bands at the time. Keith's her earlier academic journey began at Smith's Church Primary School, then on to Tutorial High School for his secondary education. During his formative years, he became a member of the Salvation Army Band, where he played the trumpet and bass drum. When he left Tutorial High School, he joined the Guyana Police Force Band as an apprentice, where he stayed for approximately 10 years. As an apprentice, his desire was to play the trumpet. However, there was no availability for a trumpet player, and he reluctantly learned to play the flute and piccolo, for which he developed a passion. In 1973, Keith was awarded a scholarship by the British Council, which allowed him the opportunity to study in England, where he attended the Royal Military Schools of Music, Nello Hall. In 1975, he graduated from this institution with a licentiate of the Royal Schools of Music diploma. Following this, he attended the University of Surrey, where in 1976, he achieved his postgraduate certificate in education. This is a teaching certificate. His scholarship covered both theory and practice that equipped him to teach a variety of instruments. Upon completion of his studies in England, he returned to Guyana, spent 2 years, and left permanently for England. When he arrived in England again, Keith was offered a position as a peripatetic that allowed him the flexibility to teach music at primary and high schools, along with college levels. Simultaneously, he established Essequibo Music, an organization that oversees a range of contemporary Black British artists, storytellers, poets, and musicians. As the director of Essequibo Music, he has worked with individuals such as Sandra Agard, storyteller, Jojo Yates, kora player, master drummer, percussionist, Dara Luque, Caribbean drummer and percussionist, and Helen McDonald, vocalist. The entity of Essequibo Music worked in educational, cultural, and performances arenas by conducting workshops and collaborating with teachers and community project workers. Activities included, but were not limited to, a residency at the Eden Project in Cornwall, a workshop at Pitt Rivers Museum, a series of African-themed workshops for the British Broadcasting Corporation Symphony Orchestra, along with programs for schools in underserved communities. As an entrepreneur, Keith founded the Keith Waithe and the Mukusi Players, a group comprising musicians of Caribbean, South American, African, and Indian heritage. The composition of this group represents his respect for multiculturalism, as he is known for passionately believing in the support of cross-cultural relationships. One of the purposes of this group was to establish an educational entity that would allow for the transmission of knowledge and skills in music. Another purpose was the opportunity to travel and engage in national and international performances. From 1981 to 1989, Keith joined the London Borough of Ealing as a community development officer. He was responsible for the development of the borough's projects and programs for Black youth, especially the Priory Center in Acton. This project came to an end due to a tragic incident, and he moved on to become the senior community officer of all of the community centers for the borough of Ealing. He stayed in that position until his early retirement, which gave him the chance to further enhance his musical projects for the Mukusi Players. As a matter of fact, he remained engaged with the Mukusi Players while working with the borough of Ealing. Keith is a flute collector. In supporting his views and belief of multiculturalism, to date, he has collected more than 200 flutes from around the world. His flute collecting not only afforded him the chance to gain knowledge about the origin of specific flutes, but also the ability rather, to learn the nuances of the sound quality of the instrument. This activity is relevant in his music composition as he creates music with eclectic sounds, particularly in the way he uses his vocal gymnastics to conjure up the sounds of animals and birds, reminiscent of the tropical rainforests of his native Guyana. He finds it fascinating that he is able to experience living in England while experiencing much of Guyana. He is proud that his band represents Britain and Europe at the same time, showcasing to the world that there is so much more to the Caribbean and South America, especially as he displays the vibrant culture of Guyana. Many fans have been treated to his frequent appearances at festivals in the United Kingdom. A few of these festivals are the Hay Festival, the Ealing Jazz Festival, Wessex Book Festival, Glastonbury Art Festival, and more. Over the years, Keith has been involved in a number of literary ventures. One of them he attended from 1982 to 1995 was the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books that was organized by three prominent book companies, Bogle Louverture Publications, New Beacon Books, and Race Today. Keith is also versed in working with spoken word artists and poets, including Kwame Dawes, Patience Akbadi, John Lyons, Jean Bindabreeze, and John Agard. Keith's work has been showcased by print, audio, and visual medias. On multiple occasions, he was featured on radio programs, British Broadcasting Corporation Radio 4, Night Waves, British Broadcasting Radio Corporation Radio 3, Mad About Music on Radio 2, and British Broadcasting Corporation World Series. In addition, the Caribbean Life newspapers in New York City has carried an article on him in which he was described as a phenomenal flautist, one who has proven that he has gotten better with age and appeals to a new generation of music lovers. As alluded earlier, Keith is a well-traveled musician. He has performed around the world, including India, Denmark, Italy, Lithuania, Estonia, Sudan, Ghana, France, Geneva, Peru, Guyana, Uganda, Colombia, the Cayman Islands, and the United States. He has worked with notable artists like Nitin Soni, Courtney Pine, and percussionist Bosco de Oliveira. His recent activities include a 2015 national tour and the project Fusion Journeys in the Victoria and Albert Museum, the Indian Festival. Keith is especially proud of three of many international contributions. In 1983, the government of Cayman Islands invited him to conduct music programs in which he worked with school children, children with special needs, and shared his talent at the local prison. Later in 2008, he attended a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kampala, Uganda, where he was a participant in cultural events that involved the bringing together of classically trained British musicians with traditional Ugandan music players. While there, he also worked with the African Children's Choir. Lastly, in 2016, he was invited by the government of Guyana to perform at the country's Golden Jubilee celebrations. To date, Keith has 1 LP, 2 DVDs, and 10 CDs. His LP done with various artists, is called Come From That Window Child, an anthology of poetry and music. And this was produced in 1986 by Friends of Bogle. His DVDs are Live in Lithuania in 1997 and Now Is the Time. And that was by Keith Waithe and the Mukusi Players in 2003. His CDs are Magic of Olmec, produced by K-Da Records in 1995. Last of the Medicine Men, produced by British Broadcasting Corporation Music in 2000. Live in Concert, Rhythms of Freedom, produced by Essequibo Music in 2000. Music Orchids for You, Is We Thing, a compilation of Guyanese music, produced by the Ghana Cultural Association of New York in 2003. Mellifluous, Blossoming into Truth, produced by Twin Arrows Music in 2003. Diverse Canopy, produced by Essequibo Music in 2005. Gathering Echoes, produced by Essequibo Music in 2009. Earthlight, The Direction, produced by Essequibo Music in 2014. And The Very Best of Keith Waithe, produced by Essequibo Music in 2015. Keith's contributions to the music industry have not gone unnoticed. In 2003, the Ghana Cultural Association of New York, Inc. awarded him with the Wordsworth McAndrew Award. This honor was bestowed on him for his meaningful contributions to the preservation of Guyanese culture through his music. In 2010, he was the recipient of the World of Music at TT Best of British Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, before I invite Keith Waithe, my guest for today, to come on screen and talk with me, with us, let's take a peek of who he really is.
Rosa.
Keith, welcome to Arts, Culture, and Thing in Between.
Oh, I'm absolutely, Rose, I'm absolutely bowled over. You made me sound as if I'm from another planet, really.
Really? You know what? I didn't do it. Don't blame me. I didn't do it. It's not me. I'm going to become Shaggy right now. It's not me. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
But can I say thank you very much for all your kind words and sentiments. And it makes me feel so humble to know that I'm on this program. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And you're amazing what you all are doing in your program. Arts and culture is so important, and the things in between.
Yeah, and you know what? I am so happy that you found the time to be here with us.
Yeah.
So thank you too. But I have to ask you, looking at your time travel in those pictures just now with the slideshow, I was fascinated by you in the police in the uniform, like, you know, I got a little chuckle out of that.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was very important, especially as a youngster in Guyana. There are very few opportunities available for when you're poor to be able to do that. And the police band was one of them. The Salvation Army was another organization. And that's what I did. And I was blessed in the sense being good enough that I got a scholarship to come to England.
All right, so we'll get into that just now. We will get into that. I'm so excited to talk about your journey. So you are the eldest of 4 children, and your father taught you to play the trumpet when you were 7 years old.
Yeah.
What do you think prompted him to teach you how to play the instrument at 7 years old, Keith?
Well, he was an amazing musician, and he played with a group called the Washboards Dance Band. And I think he can assess talent when he wants to assess it. And he recognized that I had an interest in music, not knowing out of my whole family, I'm the only one who does music. It's very strange.
How do you think he knew that? What about you as a 7-year-old? Told him, were you like hitting song? Were you like blowing your, making sounds with your mouth? What?
I was making songs because one of the things we did, I remember as a youngster in Guyana, we used to, there's something called a pawpaw stalk that you create holes. And I was able to create holes with that pawpaw stalk in Georgetown, where I was living well, this time I was living now in Kitty. Sherwood Street, Kitty. So I think he recognized that.
Sounds? And you were able to make sounds with that pawpaw stalk?
Oh, yes, very much.
How old were you when you started doing that? Do you remember?
Well, I think I must have started it around 6 to 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And Daddy picked up on that.
And he knew this boy had a talent or anticipated talent.
Nice. So your father was a musician. You said he played in big bands. And did you ever get a chance to hear him or watch him play?
Well, I watched him play in the Washboards because one of the things, he wasn't like me, a soloist or to do things to bring out. He was part of the whole ensemble. So he brought all the musicians together musically, and that's what he was good at. But he was an amazing person. He had I must tell you a secret here. He was also not a very good teacher, because he would, if I make a mistake on playing the trumpet, and I'm amazed I don't have arthritis in my fingers, because he used to be hitting it with a rule, what we call ruler in Guyana.
But you know what? I've heard similar stories from artists whose parents taught them.
Okay.
Parents tend to be harder on their children, I think, than, on other people, than other students, put it that way, who are not their children. And I think that's because they want the best for their children. So I'm not condoning, I'm not condoning the using the ruler and all of that. I'm not condoning, but I get it. It's part of the Caribbean cultural.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And also I really enjoyed the way he taught me the principles of the trumpet. And I'm a kind of a person like that. If I had to study or I'm studying something, I really work very hard. I might make mistakes, hence his beating my fingers and things like that. But I think he had my best intentions at heart.
Of course. Of course, are you kidding me? Yes. So what was your involvement in activities while attending Smith's Church Primary School? Were you leaning anyway to the arts? Yes, you were making sounds out of your pawpaw stalk.
Pawpaw stalk, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But at school, were you involved in any activities that were molding you that way, aside from the trainings that you were getting from Daddy?
No, I think the Daddy's experience was enough.
That was it.
Yeah. Okay. And also because in school, we were really concentrating on the academic work.
Yeah.
So there was no time to do all that music that I come to love later.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Good old Caribbean upbringing. You know, music is nonsense, dance is nonsense, drama, school. You got to become
Food.
a lawyer, a doctor, a
Yeah,
teacher, or
that's right.
one of those. Yes. So you joined the Salvation Army band also at an early age, where you played the trumpet and the
Yeah.
bass drum.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you? And with the bass drum, tell us, because the bass drum would be something different from the trumpet now.
Yeah. Well, if you work backwards, the bass drum was ideal for me because of my height and size. I was tall, and I was able to play the bass drum. And in fact, I even did that when I joined the police band later. But the trumpet was a very important instrument for the Salvation Army, because I remember we used to have, oh gosh, I used to go to church 3 times a day on Sunday, going to church morning, then lunchtime, and then the evening.
Mhm.
And then we would be going in the street marching.
I remember that. I remember that. Now, which location were you going to? Because I lived on Regent Street between Alexander and Camp, and there was an Salvation Army church on Alexander and South.
Alexander Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I went to.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I went to. And I was able to, we were able to go and practice and song, because we had a wonderful bandmaster of the Salvation Army called Branford Isaacs. And he was very, very keen on supporting youngsters like myself. And there was incidentally, there was another Keith Waithe in the Salvation Army. So he started using my middle name, which I don't use. Sorry, I never use that name anymore.
I'm not going to even ask you what it is.
Yeah, so that was what we did. We did, and you know, we used to march proudly. But I was also, because all my mates, they don't want to come to church, so I used to carry this brass cornet in a paper bag to hide it from my friends. Oh, it's so sad. But I worked very hard when I'm at home practicing it. And my mom used to make sure we have good dinners and so on to support what my dad was doing.
Good, good. I love this story. Oh my goodness. I love that. I love that. So when you left tutorial, you became an apprentice with a Ghana police force band.
Yes.
How was this decision made now for you to become an apprentice there?
Well, that's really my dad's doing, because he wanted me to excel and to learn the basics. And the only place you could get it in Guyana at that time, especially doing music, you've got to, there were no other opportunities around but going to the police band. Because at the time, the GDF, Guyana Defense Force, didn't have a military band, just a police band. So my dad knew the bandmaster. And he asked me about joining. But then the interesting thing about it, there was no vacancy for trumpet players. There was vacancies for flute players. And, you know, sorry about this, Rose, but in the old days, we used to say, no, nobody plays the flute unless you're a woman.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I reluctantly said yes, because there was no.
So let me ask you then, in the police force band,
Yeah.
the other flute players were women? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm just saying.
Generally speaking.
Generally, the flute is known to be played by women, especially in orchestras, big orchestras in England, America, all played by women.
You know, I never knew that, and I never paid attention to that fact.
Yeah, that's a very important. Yeah, and that's what I was reluctant to get involved in that, because
look at you now.
I'm a collector of flutes.
That too. So while an apprentice in the Ghana Police Force Band in 1973,
yeah,
in Guyanese vernacular, brapsen, burup. You got a scholarship from the British Council, which allowed you the opportunity to study in England.
Yeah.
How did this come about? How did this happen for you?
Well, this was really to do with the fact that not boasting, I was very good. Because I used to spend hours practicing rows, really long hours. I remember when the police band, I used to be practicing, because the police band room used to be on camp in the seawall.
Right, Eve Larry.
Yeah. And so I was able to, I'd be practicing all the time, long notes, the kind of technique you need to develop your embouchure, lip formation, and things like that. So the British Council, I was selected by the British Council because they saw I had a potential. And then the other secret is that they were hoping for me to become the next director of music for the Guyana Police Force Band. And you could only have that training in England.
Okay. So you were singled out, so to speak.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. I tell you what, because you were singled out and because you're so good, why don't we hear a little something from you? Oh. I heard you drop a couple of big words on us just now, embouchure and lip formation. We'll get to that. I took my notes. I don't know what those are about, but you will teach us.
I'll show you something, yeah.
Okay.
Now this is my silver flute that you find in orchestras. And this is the flute that it has an extra key at the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, an extra key. And that gives you more flexibility and to play deeper notes. For example, if you want to play a low note, you have to go right down with the finger. And that technique I developed using what I call the embouchure, which is the lip formation and the technique. But very okay.
Yeah. So you were saying you learned that in England.
So I learned that because I discovered from my training that I had in Guyana, it didn't give me, wasn't able to do the performances because we had tutors would teach us different instruments at Nella Hall, and my flute tutor, I always remember him, and his name was George Crozier. And he said to me, Keith, if you want to be a great player, you've got to change your embouchure. And I said, oh dear. And I had to learn it, relearn it. So while people, because we lived in the Royal Military School of Music, and while they were playing, I was practicing because I was determined. I came from Guyana, and I had to get my technique up to the standard to make me a good player.
So the embouchure is?
The embouchure is a lip formation that you use to play the flute like this. I don't know if you can see me. So in order to do all of that, you have to have a very good embouchure.
You know, I tell you, we look at experts like yourself in whatever genre or instrument you play and just think that's easy. Just give me the thing. I'll put it to my lips and just blow. And now you're talking about big words and techniques like embouchure. I never knew that. Thank you. Thank you for the teaching. Really, really appreciate it. So you spent 3 years in England studying music. You just talked about learning techniques, enhancing your skills to play the flute at in England when you went away. And you spent 2 years at the Royal Military Schools of Music, Nettle Hall, and 1 year at University of Surrey.
Yeah.
You graduated with a licentiate of the Royal Schools of Music diploma. And I'm wondering, was that a military school?
Well, it's interesting because it was a military school that gave you a broad perspective of music learning, music making. And like, for instance, when I qualified, I was the best overseas student. I had the best jazz group. I had the best classical band, which primarily had the flute as a central instrument.
Wow.
So it was worth the sacrifice of shifting that my flute teacher told me, George Crozier, about changing my embouchure.
Wow. What stood out for you in that experience in really enhancing your craft?
Well, it's what stood out for me is the fact that I needed to develop whatever we do in life, you need to work hard. And when you work hard, it bears dividends. And this is what I've done all my life. Like, even when I work with the Makusi players, I always try to bring in personal things into it.
So I gotta ask you this one. After 2 years at the Royal School of Music, right? Yeah. You attended the University of Surrey, and in 1976 it was, you achieved your postgraduate certificate in education, which is a teaching certificate.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how different this experience was for you from the Royal Military School of Music. How different was that experience?
Well, it was primarily a classical education I had. So it wasn't just military music, but it also gave me a chance to broaden out my perspective of teaching as an art form to help young people, to help older people. And this was just marvelous to be able to do that as a youngster coming from Guyana, and to learn all these different principles is so important.
So you got a really sound foundation in learning both theory and practicum.
That's correct.
That equipped you to teach a variety of instruments too.
Yep.
What are some of those instruments?
Well, a lot of them, the instruments were, apart from the flute, there was the trumpet, trombone, clarinet, saxophone, bass, or mostly wind instruments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I have to ask you this question. Do you still play those instruments that you just mentioned?
Well, I don't have the time now to play all of them, but what I do now still is that I still use the principles that I've learned as a youngster at Nell Hall or the University of Surrey to develop those techniques. So I still use those techniques and principles.
When last did you play another instrument other than the ones you're familiar with? And I wanted to ask that question differently, but I swung it up for you there.
Oh, that's naughty.
Yeah, I know.
Well, because the Makusi, I've chosen people who've got the technique and style of those different instruments. And I just use my flute, primarily the flute, to enhance what they do. So they may be playing, say, a melody, and I would use something like my vocal gymnastics, which is but
Mhm.
you had to learn, try these things in order to be able to be a broader artist, a broader musician, because I was working not only with musicians, but storytellers and poets
Yeah.
and other artists. So that really brought, so I was able to use all my skills that I learned at those two major institutions, Royal
Wow.
Military School of Music
Mhm.
and the Royal College of Music.
Now, you completed the scholarship after 3 years,
Yeah.
went back to Ghana, spent 2 years before permanently migrating to England. What did you do for the 2 years that you went back to Guyana?
Well, what I was playing more. In fact, there's a number of things I was doing at that time, because as a musician, because I was classically based, I couldn't do some of the things I wanted to do. For instance, I couldn't do improvisation. I just had to learn and relearn. And so I was working with jazz musicians in Guyana, like Harry Whitaker or like Ansel Wyatt. All these people were doing jazz, and I wanted to be able to do it, but I couldn't do because of my classical training. I remember that people used to laugh at me because my training was dum 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 dum, keep the pulse going, and I wanted to play. So, but I had to leave those organizations,
Uh-huh.
hence going to India, hence going to Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana, and
Wow.
yeah, to be able to do
Wow.
all of that.
Love it, love it, love it. All right, so I'll ask Sammy to play our flyer quickly, and then I'll ask you to play something else for us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So, Sam, could you play the flyer for us? So for those of you who've joined us late, I'm Rose October, sitting with Keith Waithe, a flautist, flute collector, music teacher, community servant, entrepreneur, composer, and director, and many more. We will learn about him today, many other hats that he wears. Keith, why not play something for us? And it's not a test, so you know. You don't
Oh,
have to
good.
prove anything.
I thought I'll share with you, because part of my collection, I collected this something called the Atente Ben flute. It's from Ghana, and it's a bamboo flute,
Mhm.
and it has 6 holes, and it sounds like this. And I'll play for you this piece that I wrote for the Atente Ben flute. And it goes, and that's what this is what I learned with improvisation when I went to Ghana and Nigeria,
Mhm.
and that pulse, as a dancer, you know all those beats.
Well, get me started now, Keith. You know, I watched you play the flute. And again, I have to tell you do it so effortlessly. You make me feel like I can pick up and blow and just move my fingers on those holes, not knowing what I'm doing, you know, but
Yeah, yeah.
watching you play
Okay.
makes one feel like they can do it. And I guess that's the expertise in you. How differently is playing that flute from your favorite flute, whatever your favorite flute is?
Well, the favorite flute was the first one.
Uh-huh.
This one here, the
Uh-huh.
C
Silk
flute.
through. Uh-huh.
Yeah. This is quite different because I also have another one here, the uh, Chinese flute now, you know, because of my multiculturalism. Can you see my Chinese
Yes.
flute? Part of the collection. So that's a Chinese flute.
You know, I'm not going to try this and hurt myself. I am just a good student right now, I'm telling you, because I am forced to really sit and listen to the distinct sounds that are coming out of each of the flutes. And I got to tell
Yeah,
you, if you were in a band playing, all I'd be thinking is, okay, Keith is playing a flute. That's it. You know?
yeah, yeah.
So it's really good to sit with you and hear you describe these different flutes and get to hear the different sounds that are coming out of them. Let me ask
Yeah.
you about when you went back to England.
Yeah.
You went back in 1978, thereabout, and landed a job as a peripatetic. You know, we got to talk about the peripatetic because I said to you when you said that to me, peripatetic? I've never heard that word. So share with us what is a peripatetic?
Well, a peripatetic teacher is one who goes around to different schools. He or she is not based at that school, but they come in for a certain amount of time to teach the instrument, or in my case, the flute. So I'll be traveling around the borough or up and down the country as a peripatetic teacher. And it's a very popular skill.
Wow. So you didn't have a homeschool, so to speak.
Not at that time, yeah. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How long did it take you before you got to homeschool?
Well, not very long, because when they discover I had these extra skills,
Right now.
yeah, I was able to, because I was working in I was in schools who wanted me or my talent.
Uh-huh.
Because not only was I doing the flute, I was doing theory and practice and instrumentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that helped me to get ahead.
So you taught music in schools and colleges. What was the most challenging experience as a music instructor, be it in schools or a college level when you were teaching?
Well, the most challenging was young people who were in colleges, because a lot of them, well, not college, high school, they felt it was really a sort of a joke,
Mhm.
and I had to use all my skills in order to inspire them to do something different with their talents and times.
Yeah.
Because you can only develop that skill if you're in a positive frame of mind.
I think that in some ways that goes across the board, though, for most
Yeah.
adolescents.
Yes, I would agree.
When you're
Yeah.
imparting knowledge about the arts, they might, if it's a group, if it's a classroom of 20, maybe two of them are very serious, and
Yeah.
the other 18 would make the two who are serious feel a little uncomfortable because they're serious, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it takes a different set of skills to really get that whole group to pay attention, to learn that, okay, you may not become the
Mm,
greatest flautist later on, but at least you want to leave this experience learning a couple of things about what
that's right.
you're playing before, you know, your education is complete. So I get that. While you had a regular job, so to speak. You established the company Essequibo Music.
Yeah.
Was that a non-profit organization? Tell us about Essequibo Music.
Well, the first thing to say that the name, the Mukusi Players, is named after the largest Amerindian tribe in Guyana. And their main instruments is a flute, a bamboo flute.
Okay, so pause 1 second, Keith. What is the connection between Essequibo Music and Mukusi Players?
Ah, yeah. Well, the Mukusi, the Essequibo is the one that does the educational work. So that's the primary focus.
Okay.
And that also helps me to bring something called the Mukusi Youth. So I also brought young people, the ones that had the talent, as I recognize the talent, I was able to use that.
Okay.
And then the other one is the Mukusi Players when we're doing professional work, like traveling the world, going here and coming to America, going to Europe. That's the difference.
Okay. So one of the things about Essequibo Music, based on what you just said, was that you were able to work in educational, cultural, and performances arenas, so to speak. You said that.
That's
also,
right.
It's in your bio, and you were conducting workshops, and you were collaborating with teachers and project and community project workers. Who were other individuals involved in Essequibo Music?
Well, primarily I was able to bring in people like Sandra Egar because I wanted to expand the branch of my music into bringing in educationalists or academics, because I even use academics too. Also, I had storytellers, so we have a chance to use the storytelling and poets, and I was able to recreate music and the band to accompany them.
Oh, okay, okay, I see what you're saying. Wow, so you're bringing in different artists,
Yes.
with different skill sets.
Hmm.
Are you meeting with them before you venture out into these collaborative spaces? I mean, in other words, are you saying this is the program that I have in mind? Or you're just coming together and just having everybody just lay out their plan individually and then it comes together at the end?
Well, most times it comes as a result of me working with the school head of the school to find out what they need, and then I go away and I create a program that is specifically designed for that particular school, and I bring in the relevant artists. So, like I bring in a storyteller and a poet. Like one point we had 3 storytellers, because the size of the school, but also what the nature of the focus that was needed.
Okay, so I'm thinking that this kind of work that we're talking about impacts communities in a really great way. That's what I'm thinking. What particular project stands out for you that you remember of? I mean, one that made a significant impact.
Well, the one that I did at the Eden Project in Cornwall, because here we were as Black and Asian artists, and I'm saying artists in a broader sense, not just musicians, but artists. And then we were able to bring schools into it. So they had a chance not only to look at what I was doing, but also the other artists, what their talents were. And then at the end of it, it's often a 10-day program. So at the end of the 10 days, we will end up with a performance, and we get the young people, the schools, to start playing, singing, dancing, or even not dancers, sorry. Yeah. So yes, so that was the kind of culmination of going to the Eden Project. Was one of the things that really made me proud of the Makusi Escriba music.
So, okay, I like that. So here it is that you've left a stamp now, and that's with the Eden Project.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, when you go out on these collaborative ventures to do projects, what do you think is the message that the underserved communities that you're serving, what message are they receiving from
Well,
the work you're doing?
I think the message is, well, we try to make sure that there's a clear message that what we're doing is not, what you call it, what we're doing is not about focusing on music, but it's focusing on the needs of that particular institution or organization. And then because it's all linked together.
Mhm.
So at the end of it, after 10 days, we were able to show, apart from the money factor,
Mhm.
is for us to do a program that is relevant so we can take it to other parts of the country. So that was another factor.
And I'm also thinking for the children involved, building character too,
Yeah,
because you're
that's
spending
right.
days somewhere along the line, something must stick, so to speak.
Yes.
Some things
Mhm.
must stick with them and make that a memorable experience that
Yes.
they can
Yes.
think about how differently they can look at self. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yes, and agree with you. That is so important. And this is why it's apart from we were involved with organizations that help to develop the needs of kids and young people from backgrounds that are not
Mhm.
normal for them to meet a Black artist like myself or my group. So that was another factor.
Oh man, you hit a very critical note there. Um, I- I'm in this moment now, but I can imagine back then. And I'm saying back then because we're talking about work that you've done in the past,
Yeah, yeah,
that, Black and brown people are not seen in the positions for our Black and brown children to aspire to.
that's
So
right.
I get that piece, which is very, very critical now. I mean, now there's a whole different shift with
Yes,
readiness and some deliberate actions to make sure that Black and brown experts are being seen and heard and
mm,
taking the lead and making sure that children who are Black and brown can see Black and brown leaders
yes,
doing exceptional work. So I want to thank you and Essequibo Music for saving communities and working with the underserved
yeah.
community. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
And because you've been doing such good work in the community, I have to ask you to play something again.
Oh dear. Well, you know what I'm going to play for you?
What?
Some masquerade music.
Oh, no, he did not. Why are you going to tease me like that, Keith? All right, go for it. Where are my dancers in the chat? Where are my dancers in the chat room? I see Michelle Singh. I see
Oh, wow.
Karen Backus. I see Verna Walcott. Where are my dancers? Lynette, I'll make you a dancer right now. Ashley, I'll make you a dancer. So give us, and the guys jump along. Go ahead. Wow. Wow, you got it like that. You play Guyana traditional masquerade, then you go to a nice sultry jazz piece. You
Peace.
got it like that. Can we give it up, please, for Mr. Keith Waithe?
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. And thanks for inviting me.
Oh man, this was awesome. You know, I gotta go off. I didn't expect you to play masquerade, but because you take me there, I have to go. You know, in Guyana, we only have two true flute players, Patagi, which
Yeah,
is Rudolph Viverus, right?
that's right.
And Free Foot. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember. He's from Linden, from the Linden
Okay.
band. Nobody else is learning. Nobody else is being taught how to play the flute
Yeah.
for masquerade. So, I mean, I don't want to burden you. You know, I don't want to burden you.
Well, because my passion is always been Guyana. So if there's a purpose that maybe the education ministry,
Mhm.
I must send to you some of my programs I suggested to the government. Not this current government, yeah, but
Yeah,
years ago.
but here's the thing with that. I realize, and we'll just spend a couple of minutes on this because I really didn't plan to talk about this, but because you played masquerade, and I'm such a Guyana masquerade enthusiast, I can't help myself. Uh, you know, one of the things I realized is if we're so passionate about what we do, we use what we can, we use what we have to make those small indentations along the way. So it might not be that whole macro piece. You know, we might have to go in and work with, the band in Victoria, the band in Linden, eventually, and come together because um, sometimes when you wait for systems to get in place, it takes forever. It never happens. So we,
Yeah,
as the microsystem, we have to do what we can with what we have.
that's the one.
So
Yeah.
that's what I would say to that. And when I went to Guyana in 2016 for Masquerade Lives, I saw a man play what sounded like a flute. Don't laugh at me, with a bottle.
Uh-huh.
A bottle.
That's right.
He was accompanying a masquerade band down the street in the masquerade jamboree parade, playing a bottle. It was awesome.
Yeah, I could imagine that.
I'm not going to talk about, I wrote my note,
Well,
his ambusher.
yes. Well, I think that's something we should talk to Dr. Vibert Cambridge about
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're
getting me
always,
there.
yeah, we're always talking about that. Trust me, we are always talking
Okay.
about that. Now, I want to switch focus a little bit and really talk some about Keith Waithe and the Makusi Players. And this is a group that comprises musicians of Caribbean, South American, African, and Indian heritage.
Yeah.
From where did you get the name Makusi? What is the meaning?
It's the largest Amerindian tribe in Guyana. That's where I got it from. And because the main instrument in the Makusi players, the Makusi Amerindian tribe is a flute. And it's a bamboo flute. Yeah.
Do you use that kind of flute in your band?
I have one, but not in a very good condition. That might be a gift.
So you know my next question is going to be, are you going to get one that is going to be in good condition?
Well, I've got a YY bone flute.
Okay. Now English.
It's made of deer bone.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. And you're saying that's from our indigenous peoples?
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Now, have you visited with any of the tribes? And have conversations? I mean, considering that, and this might be a shot in the dark too, but I'll ask it. Considering the name of the group is Mukusi Players, have you had any conversations with them? When I say them, any of the Amerindian tribes, regarding your music, with the flute being your expert instrument?
Yeah. I've had several conversations with the Amerindian troops and Amerindian groups in Guyana over the years. So yes, that's a very good, that'll make a good conversation.
Because, you know, right now there's this big shift, and not just in Guyana, across the, I mean, around the world, with respect being given to the indigenous people and
That's right.
what the foundations that the indigenous peoples have laid for us. So that's where that question came from. So you're serious about bringing cultures together, and in some ways, in many ways, Keith, you have bragging rights. You know, I mean, aside from Keith Waithe and the Mukusi Players that bring together the Caribbean, South American, African, and Indian heritages, I'm wondering how you would share with us reasons for multiculturalism being such a high priority for you when working, because of the admixture of Mukusi Players, Caribbean, Indian, African, South American, and then you own over 200 flutes.
Yeah.
So talk to that.
Well, I think it's one of the things for me that I've often felt passionate about is that as I travel around the country, as I go into different projects, I discover that there are people around who are doing similar kind of work that I do, but not necessarily music, but they use other forums to get to disadvantaged young people, get advantage groups. And I think that's something I would want to continue and support for the diversity.
Tell us a little more about the Mukusi band, the Mukusi Players, working with South American, Caribbean, Indian, African.
Yeah.
Is it that the members of the different cultural groups are bringing different sounds? How are the Mukusi Players, so to speak, coming together as a band with Keith Waithe?
Well, one of the things is we shouldn't forget is that the flexibility of that organization, it allows people to come with their own talents and share it. For instance, if you're like, I've got tabla players who I work with, and they were able to bring in their own style of interpreting what for instance, one of my compositions is called Maya. And they would bring some of the information and rhythms as a tabla player. And then we have an African Ghanaian drummer bringing a complementary kind of rhythm to go with that. And then, of course, the harmonies of the piano, the bass, the drums, and the rhythmic patterns helps to sustain that.
I have to ask you, do you write music? Is that the right lingo? Is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's just, I do write music, yes. I've got a lot of written compositions.
So when...
And I got scope for making more music. And I use the writing as a yardstick to get the talents over.
So let me ask you this, because I think I'm hearing Phil Nichols in my head. Is it right? Is it correct to say write music or score music?
Well, I think either write or score is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, because I want to be a good student, so you know.
Yeah.
Now, I am thinking that your music is presented in a way in which, okay, so let's make believe we're going on the tour,
No, I
right?
don't think we need to go on a tour. I tell you what we need to do
What?
is all my compositions and my albums,
Uh-huh.
I've got the scores that I've written for them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
So I can pass it on to other people.
there, I got it. I got it. But I was just thinking, that we'll pick up and we'll go on the tour someplace, just me and you. I'll be a
Okay.
backup singer, right? Or,
Yeah.
or I'll be trying with the vocal gymnastics because I
Yeah.
can do that. I know that.
Yeah.
And you don't have to audition me for it, but we're going on a tour, right? And we have our friends waiting in this particular country in La La Land, waiting for us to go there. And they have some musicians waiting to join us to come up with the band for this particular tour.
Yeah.
We just give them the score sheets and we have some rehearsals and we're ready to go.
That's right.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So Keith Waithe and the Bukusi Players is not only a group that does national and international performances, but one that engages in knowledge sharing.
That's right.
Right? There's that knowledge sharing piece of music.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. How does the knowledge sharing happen?
Well, I think it happens very. I've been blessed to be trained and skilled in order to share knowledge. And when I go into a new environment, take for instance, when we went to Colombia, there were musicians there who are great jazz, they can play jazz, but they don't know any Indian music or African music or Caribbean music or Guyanese music. And that's how I shared knowledge. And also I try and find out from them what are their interests. So that's another way that I do it.
Okay.
Knowledge sharing.
I get it. I get it. So we can openly say that in addition to everything you do, you're a community servant, especially based on what you just said, right? You have worked with the London Borough of Ealing as a community development officer with a program that addressed the needs of Black youth, especially the Prairie Center in Acton.
Yeah.
How was that for you? I mean, Keith, the musician, right? Keith, the community servant, working with Black youth. How are you bringing this together? I'm looking at this as a variation on a theme based on what we spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm looking because you especially mentioned working at the Prairie Center in Acton. What was significant about your work at that center?
Well, what was significant was about the fact that we had people who don't often get a chance to be involved in a variety of art forms and systems. And the Prairie Center gave them that facility to do that.
Okay.
So that's what I was doing. And I brought it down to the lowest denominator in order to share it with the young people.
And when you say the lowest denominator, what do you mean?
Well, there are people there who didn't have the opportunity for proper schooling. So that's I found ways of working with them to develop the schooling. And also there's a lot of other community issues like drugs and all of that, which is so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And I really admire hearing that balance from artists, because there has to be another way, other than working at the theater with the lights, camera, and the action and all of that. There has to be that balance in terms of giving back to the community, because we're really saving souls. Really, we're saving lives. And sometimes it's not just children. Sometimes it's parents of the children too,
That's
who
right.
are being touched.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
you also became a senior community officer at the community centers of the Borough of Ealing. I'm wondering how did you use music to really bring your community service in? I'm thinking that there was an administrative component, maybe.
Yeah, I wasn't in this at this point. There was no music.
There was no music.
That was doing primarily administrative work, working with community centers and no artists, but general community organizations in order to develop it. No music. Yeah, so I was an administrator.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's different.
Totally different.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm looking at you and just thinking that, and I did say just thinking that Keith is a musician. That's it.
No, it was more
There's
than that.
More than that. And I
Yeah.
love it. And that's why I like having these discussions, Keith.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's
I
been a pleasure.
I mean,
I'm losing my voice.
How come you're losing your voice? And that's, I really didn't plan for you to lose your voice. Would it be too much to ask you to play another piece after I ask Sammy to play the flyer?
No, we'll ask Sammy to play that piece that I sent to you.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
But is it too much to ask you to play another piece?
I think so.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Sammy, could you play the flyer and then play the clip?
Hi, my name is Keith, and I'll be playing some songs from the rainforest in South America. This is an ocarina, one is from the rainforest, from Peru. This is a wooden flute from Peru. A woodpecker in the rainforest. Right, that's me done. See you later.
Wow. So we've just seen that clip that was created as a result of being
In lockdown.
in lockdown with the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? And you call it the new lockdown music project. You got a few of them. This is which one, 2 or 3?
3.
This was 3. So I have to say, this particular clip displays that there's only one Keith Waithe, man. I'm telling you.
Thank
The
you.
way that you've used the different flutes is a testament, really, to your expertise. Now, I'm wondering, how important is it for you to know your personal sounds, Keith, with what we just witnessed, and in all of the work that you do? Because you alluded to, and you gave us a taste of it, your vocal gymnastics earlier on too.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, my personal sound is using the flute in a non-traditional way. Like, for instance, using my fingers to click the keys. So I'm using it in a non-traditional way. And then I use the wind sound, or the scary songs, as I call it. So those are my personal songs, and I try to bring that into my music. Depends on what I'm writing for. Yeah.
You know, I have to ask you, when you're performing with your personal sounds, I'm thinking, depending on reaction from audience, you're able to improvise some of those sounds in there.
Yeah.
Or you, okay, you do. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying. Okay. Now, how do you practice these sounds to know that you've gotten that particular sound that you are seeking? For example, the clip that we watched, the scenario is that you're out in the elements, right? Where we are hearing all the natural sounds, so to speak, but you're in there with your sounds too.
Yeah.
How are you able to, I don't know, I want to use the word choreograph because I'm a dancer, but
Well, I was working closely with my son, who is Adam. He's an artist who can create things, and all that backdrop that you see on that particular clip, he created all of that. So he works with me in making it happen.
but there were the natural sounds also of water, of the birds and all of that. He's
Yeah.
making all of that happen.
That's right.
and you are infusing your personal sounds
Yes,
with the flutes, the various flutes.
that's right.
That, how many flutes did you use? Like about 4 or 5?
No, 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 6.
6 of them.
Yeah,
That little itty bitty one.
yeah,
That was from Peru?
that's from Peru, and that's also it's an ocarina, and it gives you the kind of bird songs that I need when I'm working with in schools or composing for radio and
Now,
television.
so far, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, you probably highlighted at least 3 flutes from Peru.
No, 2.
Wasn't it 2 in the in that clip?
No, 3.
3 from Peru.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Peru, so 3 of them.
yeah.
And earlier on live, you had shown us one from Peru. The one that you showed was one from the clip. I'm just trying to see if I'm learning correctly. That's all.
Yeah, one of them was from the
Was
clip.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have you've performed around the world. India, Denmark, Italy, Lithuania, Estonia, for those of you who missed the bio in the beginning, Sudan, Ghana, France, Geneva, Peru, Guyana, Uganda, Colombia, the Cayman Islands, and the United States. Where was the most memorable international performance for you?
The Sudan,
Tell us why.
because of the one of the things that struck me about the Sudan is the amount of people. And then we were in the desert. So we were able to create things in the desert that I didn't even realize was there.
For example?
Some of the wind songs and the bird songs and so on.
Wow.
Yeah. Wonderful experience.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, and I'm not asking you to show us them now, I'm thinking that with that experience, you had some recordings done.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, you've done some international work, and I would like to label you a global servant, because in the Cayman Islands in 1983, you did some international work there. In Kampala, Uganda in 2008, and in Guyana in 2016. What's the common thread of your international work?
The common thread is me being able to bring together a variety of people, because what I've done in those trips is that I brought the Makusi players, my band, and then get them to work with violinists who have never worked with an African musician or an Indian musician, and work with instruments. Like when I work with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, nobody's ever experienced working with non-traditional instruments in an orchestral setting. Yeah.
Now, was it Cayman Island you spent an extensive period, like 6 weeks?
6 months.
6 months. Tell us, 6 weeks. Tell us about that experience, though, in the Cayman Islands, where you could say you lived for 6 months.
Yeah, well, it was very humbling, because not only was I working, I was there on my own, so I didn't take my band.
Okay.
And I was able to work with local musicians and get them into the frame of what was expected. And that's where I was able to use my skill as a composer, skill as an arranger, and using some of their own traditional music from the Cayman Islands into my projects.
So it's safe to say you left your stamp in Cayman Islands, in the Cayman.
I hope so.
Wow, that's exciting. That is exciting. Now, let's talk about how the
Rose, I'm losing my voice.
Okay.
Are we okay for time?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Are we okay for time?
Yes, we're okay for time. We're okay for time. I'm getting ready to wrap this up. I'm getting ready to wrap it up. And I wanted to mention that print, audio, and visual platforms have carried your work. You've been featured on BBC radios and and other platforms. I know that the Caribbean Life newspapers carried a piece on you and really spoke to the fact that you are someone who is appealing to the new generation. And I also want to raise awareness that you've been recognized for your work before we close this off. And say that the Ghana Cultural Association of New York and the World of Music at TNT Best of British Music honored your work. And I would like to join them in applauding your expertise and the work that you've done in England and internationally. I would like to wish you continued success and say thank you for coming by and chatting with me on Arts, Culture, and Thing in Between. But before we go, please tell our viewership where they can find you and your work.
Well, if they can get on my website, which is www.keithwaithe.com. And it has all my albums, my work, and for a very small price, they can pay for some of those items and some of the CDs.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Rose, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, the pleasure was mine too. So I will say to the viewers of Arts, Culture, and Things in Between, thank you. Thank you. As of course, I firstly say thank you to our guest today, Keith Waithe, who wears the hat of a flautist, flute collector, music teacher, community servant, entrepreneur, composer, director, and many more that you've heard. I would like to say thank you to Claire Goring, who does the flyer every week, to Marcia Gordon, instrumental with working on the YouTube channel for the show, Yasu Narayan for the website building, Dr. Raul Manzano for assisting with the painting of the logo, Raul De Silva of RDE Pros, the man behind a lot of this technical engineer work, and of course, Samuel Williams, who is working the show now. Thank you, all of you. And Ilushi Mystery for her technical work also. These individuals are very special to me and this show because they give unselfishly of their time. So I thank them. I also want to say thanks to GCA for allowing the program to be streamed on GCA's Facebook page live. And to all of you who continue to support by joining Arts, Culture, and Sing in Between on Sundays from 3 to 5, I thank you. For those of you who are watching the recording because of time constraints that prevent you from joining us live, thank you. I encourage you to tell a friend, like the Facebook page, like and subscribe to the YouTube page, and please visit the website at roseoctober.com. I look forward to you joining me again next Sunday, 3 to 5. I'm your host, along with my guest today, Keith Waithe, saying thank you for joining us, and I'm wishing you safety, good health, and a productive week ahead. See you next time. Bye-bye all.
Thank you.